proper development, expression, and alignment of things, then jnana, proper jnana, true knowledge, will inspire one in the line of devotion. And so the goddess Saraswati, she can also bestow this kind of grace, the revelation of spiritual knowledge that is supporting the development of devotion. So we can remember, Saraswati Devi and her goddess Saraswati and her, in this aspect of hers, we can pray for her grace on this day. And, in a worldly sense, on this day in Bengal, people are worshipping her, with a different mentality, in terms of, worldly knowledge, and so on and so forth. So it's a Saraswati Puja, and then also this first day of spring, if it's the first day of spring, it's a good time for some dance, right? So Krishna performs Rasa Leela on this day, Vasanta Ras. There's a few particular points throughout the year. In Kartik, there's I don't remember, maybe it's the first day of Kartik, I'm not sure. But there's also the day of Rasa Leela, and this is another day.
With the full moon.
Is it Purnima also?
I think so.
Okay. So Krishna also performs his Rasa Leela on this day.
So is it, like you say, specific times through the year that he performs Rasa Leela?
I believe so, yeah. I mean, I'm not an expert at all, not by a long shot. But just from what I've observed on our calendar, there's a few special days in the year which are highlighted. That, I mean, I don't know how it works. Maybe sometimes it happens spontaneously, but there are these special points. Maybe it's considered to be an auspicious time. I don't know. That it is mentioned on the calendar.
And there is no specific time in Goloka Vrindavan, right? Time is eternal.
Time moves at the sweet will of her Lord.
Yeah.
Time doesn't move without Krishna's.
So it's not like as here in time and space,
Yeah.
It's not like that.
We're just getting like some dig darshan, like some idea, like some very, general pointing in the direction. This expression dig darshan means like that, pointing in the general direction of things. Many of the things that we hear are like that. Like with our senses, with our limitations, our limited powers of understanding and perception, we cannot really understand. This plane is of a completely different nature, but we're given some kind of reference point, some kind of idea. So we have something to chew on in our brains. Then also it is the holy appearance day of Vishnu Priya Devi, who was the second consort of Mahaprabhu. And her history is very, painful. It's very heart-rending, very heart-touching, poignant. That she's 14 years old, 15 years old, when Mahaprabhu leaves her to take sannyas. And we don't hear that much about her, but few things we've heard from our gurus. But she was, very, very young when Mahaprabhu left to take sannyas. And Srila Sridhar Maharshi gave a very wonderful talk about this, discussing how she made this great sacrifice, actually, for the benefit of the world. She gave up her most beloved for the benefit of all. She sacrificed her So that, just that, that sacrifice she made, that is most worshipable. And then also, we were told that after Mahaprabhu left, she lived, like showing a mood of real separation, real love, and she adopted a life of extreme abnegation. And she lived on practically nothing. It's said that every day she would chant she would chant the Mahamantra, like we are chanting on beads. She would chant on grains of rice. So for every grain of rice, she would chant one Mahamantra. And then once she had some small pile, then she would cook that, and that's what she would eat. Like that, that kind of vairagya, that type of, renunciation from the world. And very, very simple in her dress and everything. And Srila Maharaj mentioned that, like her mood and her manner, her behavior, it was so striking and so heart-touching that even the opposition party to Mahaprabhu, they were conquered by that. Their hearts were so moved. That led them to a new appreciation for Mahaprabhu, to see like how much devotion she had for him. Then, that led into a new level of appreciation. That's how powerful her devotion, her expression of devotion was. And then also, so like this was her sacrifice, and then in another way, it's also framed in another way that Mahaprabhu made a great sacrifice in leaving her company. There are these verses in Srimad Bhagavatam which they're usually seen as describing Lord Ramachandra, but our Guru is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He's shown how this verse also applies to Ramachandra, to Mahaprabhu. And so that first line, Tyaktva Suduschaja, Tyaktva Rajya Lakshmi, Sarepsita Rajya Lakshmi, Dharmishta Arya Vachasa, Yadakad Aranyam, Mayam Yagena. Can't remember it right now. But in that first line, it's mentioning how the Lord left the royal throne. And so, like in the case of Ramachandra, that's very apparent, because he had to honor this wish of his stepmother that he be banished. He had to give up his claim to the throne. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has said that this can also refer to Vishnu Priya. To her heart, her love is like this royal throne, and how Mahaprabhu had to give that up. That was a very great sacrifice, to give up the loving service of Vishnu Priya Devi.
And I remember when Mahaprabhu came from Katwa after he had taken sannyas, then he passed by and Vishnu Priya was in like a dirty sari and all covered, and gave her last dandavat, and then dandavat pranam, and then Mahaprabhu left his shoes there in the courtyard, and she had the shoes of Mahaprabhu to worship.
That was later actually.
Oh,
that
yeah.
was when Mahaprabhu came back to Navadvip after 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
He left, he took sannyas, and then after 5 years had passed, he came back for a visit, and he didn't stop in Mayapur, not to be too close to the area of his birth and his home, his married life. He was mostly in the Koladvip area where our mat is, and also, what is his name? Begins with the V. Vijayavachasrati, I think, in that area. But he said some distance away, he passed by his house, and then that incident took place. And then those shoes, it is said that there is one temple, we will go there in March. There's a temple which is Vishnupriya Devi's temple, and those shoes, it is said that those are the same shoes, that are there. But the deity there is very, very special because it is a deity of Mahaprabhu, which was manifest by the desire of Vishnupriya Devi after Mahaprabhu had left. And when after Mahaprabhu left to take sannyas. And it's also special because it's one of only about 3 deities that were worshipped within the actual time of Mahaprabhu. Because mostly these deities are coming later, but there are 3 deities described as having, been manifest and in operation of worship in the actual time of Mahaprabhu. So this deity is one of those, and really this deity we can understand has come from the heart of Vishnupriya. And it's mentioned how she made this commission that this deity be made, and they brought her, manifest the deity and brought the deity to her, and the first time she said, "No, this is not my Lord," so they had to take the deity away. And then again they came with another deity, and again she said, "No, this is not my Lord." And then I think it was on the 3rd time where she felt the presence of Mahaprabhu so strongly that she covered her head. Because there's some tradition like that a lady will cover her head in front of a very respectable person. So she felt so strongly, "Oh, this is my Lord," and she felt some shyness, and she covered her head. And a very beautiful deity, very beautiful deity. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj, Gurudev, they appreciate that deity.
And I think the shoes were wooden, but now they put silver around it for conservation. But originally the shoes were wooden, but for conservation they put, because they're like silver now, silver.
Yeah, I don't know the details. I wouldn't examine it, but
I believe that they place those shoes on your head if you come there after puja. They have this little wooden box with a pillow inside, and that pillow the shoes rest. And then if you approach the altar, bow down, and the pujari, he takes these shoes and he in the box and he puts it on your head.
if you pay 500 rupees,
Yeah.
and then you will get pure Krishna prema.
Yeah.
Now you know, Rani Mohini, remember. This is the secret. So, Vishnupriya Devi, day of her divine
Jaya.
And actually her position is very special for the ladies. Because especially for ladies who want to live a life of, brahmachari, sannyas, it is, they can draw inspiration from her example, because she lived like that, And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Kumkunti may have told you, because Srila Saraswati Thakur, he conceived of that, we hear of how he developed the Gaudiya Math, 64 Maths, and it was a mission of men, basically, brahmacharis and sannyasis. But I don't know if he actually put it in place or if he had the interest at the time, but he also discussed this concept of having what he called the house of Vishnu Priya, like a sanctuary for ladies who wanted to dedicate their lives in the way that brahmacharis and sannyasis did. They would have their own exclusive, dedicated ashram, where they, in this safe space, they could freely express themselves and serve. And he, there's an article that he wrote, Kumkunji, can show it to you.
Okay, I'll ask her.
And I seem to remember he mentioned there how, no men would stay there, but if needed, some men could come sometimes from outside to offer some service there, and then they go back. Something like that. Yeah, that's like the idea behind the place. So she has some special, Srila Gurudev, he gave saffron to Bhakti Lalita on this day, on the day he selected that day, Vishnu Priya Day. So it is a day that ladies who have some inspiration in that line, they can draw some strength, some encouragement by your divine example. And let's see, what else is on the list here?
Raghunathas.
Pundarika.
Pundarik Vidyanidhi is also the appearance date. Pundarik Vidyanidhi.
Is it the disappearance of Parvat Maharaj, like our Parvat Maharaj, or is it another Parvat Maharaj?
This is a godbrother of Srila Srila Maharaj. Pundarik Vidyanidhi, he is a dear associate of Mahaprabhu. We're already 7:45. We haven't even got started yet.
So many.
Pundarik Vidyanidhi, very dear associate of Mahaprabhu. And he is actually understood to be, he's identified as, because there's parallels, all of the principal associates of the Lord in Krishna Lila, they all also have their expression in Gaura Lila. So Pundarik Vidyanidhi, he's identified as being Rishabhanaraj, the father of Srimati Radharani. So very special position. And he so he has this special relationship with the Lord, and it's mentioned that sometimes when he was coming, because he lived in another, I think it was called Chattagram, maybe, and he didn't live in Navadvip. But it's mentioned that when he was coming, sometimes Mahaprabhu would start calling out Bap, Bap, which means father, and nobody could understand, why he was saying that. And then he also has a very special connection with Gadadhar Pandit, because Gadadhar is the direct expression of Srimati Radharani in Gaura Lila. So they have a very special relationship, and there's a beautiful history connected to that, but we won't tell it now because we don't have much time. But Gadadhar Pandit ended up taking initiation from Pundarik Vidyanidhi. This name, Vidyanidhi, it means something like a reservoir of knowledge. Vidya means knowledge, Nidhi means like a reservoir, something like that. But it's said that Mahaprabhu would sometimes call him Prema Nidhi, like he's a reservoir of prema. So he's mentioned in our song, Premanidhi Mahashaya. He's referred to like that as Premanidhi. Very, very sweet name. And he was an interesting like character because he was like this abode of intense devotion, but he chose to present himself in a very worldly way. So common people were not able to recognize his spiritual position because he was a wealthy man and he would dress in a very like luxurious way and lived a very wealthy lifestyle. And so to common people he appeared like a Vishakha, like an ordinary enjoyer in the world. And but beneath that, he was concealing this very intense mood of devotion. So Punjari Vijanidhi, and I'll leave Raghunath Das Goswami to the end. Raghunandan Thakur. Raghunandan Thakur, he is an avatar, I believe, of Pradyumna, who is the son of Krishna. Pradyumna or Aniruddha? Does anyone remember? I think it's Pradyumna. Pradyumna was the son, Aniruddha was a grandson of Krishna, I believe. But anyhow, he's also a great devotee in Gaura Lila. And there's a very sweet story how when he was a boy, maybe around 12 or something, his father asked him to take care of the offering. His mother would cook, and the father he was a big doctor, the father, he had to go away one day. And so he asked his son Raghunandan to perform the offering. And he said something like feed the deity or something like that. And so Raghunandan went to do the offering, and he was expecting to see the deity like literally come out and eat. But that didn't happen. And so then Raghunandan started to get, a little worried and my father told me I have to feed the deity. If he's not eating, the food is still here on the plate. This very simple faith. And so he started to cry. He prayed to the Gopal deity, please eat this or I'll be in trouble. My father told me I have to feed you. And please, you take. And so then the Lord was moved by that, and he took it in a physical sense. And then afterwards, the mother saw the plate. You naughty boy, what have you done? No, it wasn't me. It was Gopal. And then the father came, and he saw that, and he was also chastising his son a little. And Raghunandan was saying, no, really, the deity took it. You told me. And so the father said, well, can we do it again? So again, he made an offering, and the father watched through a peephole, and he saw this transaction took place, so you can understand who his son was. And then there's this very sweet exchange that's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, when, I don't remember if Mahaprabhu was greeting them or saying goodbye, but every year there would be a big group of Vaishnavas who would come from Bengal to meet Mahaprabhu in Puri. And there would always be this very sweet heart exchange, when they were arriving, and then also when they were leaving. Mahaprabhu would go around the group and have some personal message for everybody. And so there's this one occasion when he Raghunandan and his father, maybe his father's name is Mukunda, I think it might be Mukunda. Mahaprabhu asks the father, tell me, Mukunda, who is the father? Are you the father, or is Raghunandan the father? Who is the father and who is the son? And then Mukunda, he says in this very sweet mood, actually Raghunandan is the Father, because by his grace we could all get Krishna Bhakti. He is superior to me in devotion, so he is like my father, I'm like his son. And it's also mentioned about Raghunandan, he lived a brahmachari, he was a lifelong brahmachari, and he served in one temple, and that there. This is all published in Sermons of the Guardian of Devotion, Volume 2. There's a chapter there, A Holy Day. Highly recommended. But there, she mentions how Raghunandan Thakur lived like this lifestyle his whole life, and how there was a tree, I think it was a champak tree, that every day would produce 2 flowers for his worship deity. And he was a beautiful dancer, as I recall. It's also mentioned.
You remember those bushes along Ruma's samadhi in Navadvip? Yasmin, it was Yasmin, they were smelling so beautiful, and all the time, every day, so many little flowers for making the gardens, and even in the afternoon, like, it was so giving of this most delicate and beautiful flower. Do you remember that? On the
Yes, I remember, yeah.
I mean, everywhere, the jasmine flowers in the trees, but these bushes, they were special. You remember?
Yeah. And there's also the disappearance day of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He's very, not someone, we hear so much about, but very, his position, his contribution is very important. And he appeared a couple hundred years after Mahaprabhu. And his great significance is that he gave very important commentaries on the devotional scriptures. He's famous for his very fine devotional analysis. He gives very, very fine points, and his commentaries are very much appreciated by our gurus. And Baladevi Vijayabhushan took shelter of him and was trained under him, and Baladevi Vijayabhushan also became a very great scholar, Vaishnava scholar and commentator in Mahaprabhu's line. So very, very important. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he's like supreme, really in that department. No one really can compare to his very, very fine analysis. So
we have some
here.
bhajans also from Vishwanath Chakravarti.
We have 1 or 2 that we sing. Isn't some Saladava by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur?
Yeah, it's
so.
Some very famous, and we sing all the time.
There's a few.
Yeah. Some 7.
But we hear his name, mentioned all the time. The reference is made to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, how he has commented on various points. Very, very scrutinizing, very, very fine analysis of things. Srila Gurudev, he told of one incident where there was a photograph of, well, maybe I won't tell all the details because we're running out of time, but Gurudev, he made some fine, there was a photograph which was a bit of a puzzle, the situation there in the photo, and Gurudev, you mentioned, Gurudev's like a young man serving in the mosque, and Gurudev could understand like why the situation had taken place, just from looking at this photo. And he mentioned it to Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj, very dear godbrother Srila Maharaj. And Goswami Maharaj was very impressed. And he told Gurudev, "You have crossed Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur." Because you could make such a fine analysis, of this photograph, So just to give some idea, like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he's known for that, like very fine points, very, very important for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And it is also the disappearance day of two of these godbrothers of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, who are prominent in the Gaudiya Math, Bhakti Devidasi Maharaj, Bhakti Sriyukta Maharaj, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj. I don't remember right now, but he tells, we can all read that or hear that talk today. Srila Sridhar Maharaj talks about them. I do recall, I think it is Bharati Maharaj, that it was him who, as a young boy, lived next to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Godrumadweep, in Navadweep. And he was just a boy, like 12 years old, and he didn't really know very much, But what impressed him is that he, later on, he recalled this, he shared this memory with Srila Sridhar Maharaj, that how Bhaktivinoda Thakur would wake up very early in the morning every day, and then outside in his garden he would stride back and forth taking the holy name and calling out the Lord's name in this very impressive way. Like he's seeing Krishna's there in the distance and calling out to him. So he had that experience as a boy, and then later he came to the Gaudiya Math to shelter Saraswati Thakur. But he had that experience then. Both great preachers in the Gaudiya Math. And then we come to Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. Divine Appearance Day. Raghunath Das Goswami. Very important for us. He has been described as our Prayojan Acharya, who has shown us most clearly what is the highest ideal of our life. We are, as we were discussing maybe last night, we are in the line of Rupa, we are in the Rupa Nuga Sampradaya, but Srila Sridhar Maharaj has mentioned, he's pointed out that even so, Raghunath Das Goswami, he has actually shown in more of a clear way what is the highest ideal of our line, which is, what? That is Radha Dasyam, the divine service of Srimati Radharani. Raghunath Das Goswami has elaborated upon that, expressed that in a more developed way than Srila Rupa Goswami. And so, actually, a more refined way of understanding our line is as the line of Rupa and Raghunath. Shri Rupa and Raghunath, the line of Shri Rupa and Raghunath. We've heard, our gurus speak of our line in that way. Raghunath is like the ultimate follower of Rupa. and he is actually revealed more clearly than Rupa, Sri Rupa, what is the ideal of Rupa's line. So this is a more refined approach. And then at the conclusion of every chapter here, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, the greatest theological scripture which has ever seen the light of day. There's that verse, Sri Rupa Raghunath Kalijarat Chaitanya Charitamrita Gauri Krishna Das. This is the expression of Kaviraj Goswami at the end of every chapter. Sri Rupa Raghunath Kalijarat, aspiring to the feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath. I am reciting this Chaitanya Charitamrita. In that we have in Vrindavan that Gurudev inquired, or came to him, that temple, which was a place where Kaviraj Goswami wrote some sections of Chaitanya Charitamrita, and so Srila Gurudev, he had that area renovated, and I don't know exactly where it came from. If it was Srila Gurudev's own idea, or if it came from someone else, and Gurudev accepted that. But in any case, throughout the walls of that temple, there was this idea to have all of the principal verses of Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think it might have been all the Sanskrit verses that are in Chaitanya. I can't remember, but principal verses of Chaitanya Charitamrita, they've been inscribed throughout the walls of that temple. But I was there in 2008 when Srila Gurudev visited there, and he entered, and I think it must have been the first time he saw it, and he commented that the most important verse was missing. And he mentioned this verse, Sri Rupa Raghunath Padejar Aj, like this is the line, Kaviraj Goswami is telling Mahaprabhu's Leela in the shelter and the service of Rupa and Raghunath.
So in which way can we remember today all these exalted Vaishnavas in a particular way, in a particular prayer?
I think by what we're doing right now, remembering their divine glories. And Raghunath, we would need a lot more time, to discuss more, about Raghunath Das Goswami. His whole life is a very wonderful example. And his life is in a very apparent way, because detachment from the world, it is not something that can necessarily be identified in an external way. And we don't necessarily need that to see that, or to be like that, to renounce in a very apparent way. However, to see the example of that is also helpful for us. And Raghunath Das Goswami, he is that kind of example. Like Kundri Vijayanidhi, he is a different mood. Ramananda Rai, they have a different mood. They're not demonstrating renunciation from the world, because that's not ultimately what this is about. But it is still helpful for us to see that example, as a demonstration of how this world has nothing to give us. And so Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, he is really considered the supreme example of that. Srila Sridhar Maharaj makes a comment like that the Vairagya of Raghunath Das Goswami, it's unparalleled, very extreme. And it's really highlighted because of the contrast of his birth, that he's born his family, by modern standards, they're billionaires, very wealthy people, high society people. And he's their only child, their son, so there's all this pressure and expectation on him that he'll take up the family business and he'll take all their wealth and property will come under his care. But he, by contrast, he's utterly indifferent. And in his heart, only desiring to stay in the company of Mahaprabhu and Vaishnavas. And there's some period of waiting time for him. He's not able to immediately fulfill his heart's desire. But eventually, he has that opportunity to leave behind his worldly life, take exclusive shelter of Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu personally gave him Govardhan Shila. Personally gave, and that Govardhan Shila Mahaprabhu had in his personal care for 2 years, it's mentioned. Would hold that Shila to his heart, to his eyes, crying in ecstasy. And Mahaprabhu gave that Shila with Gunjamala to. So this is also very significant for us, because Govardhan is very, like all of these things, which are the most important things. Raghunath Das Goswami, that was with him. He embodied that. He lived that. So, residence in Govardhan, that is also described as being the highest ideal. That is the place that our gurus aspire to take shelter of. In Govardhan, one step below Radhakund. And so Raghunath Das Goswami, he personally received the Govardhan Shila from Mahaprabhu. And it's also very interesting to note that Raghunath Das Goswami, his mood when he received that was that, not that, oh, now this is in my possession, but that I've been given the shelter of Govardhan. This is the devotional perspective on things. Not that, oh, I have something, but I am had by that. Not that I own something, but I am owned by that. This living in the consciousness of the super-subjective plane, being an object to that super-subject. So Raghunath Das Goswami was feeling, receiving that from Mahaprabhu, that he was being given the shelter of Govardhan. And he took shelter, then later he took shelter in Govardhan. And he wrote those beautiful prayers where he's praying to Govardhan, please give me your shelter. Nirupadi Gurunena Sri Shachi Nandanena. He's saying that, there's nobody lower than I. I'm a very sinful person. I'm a cheater. I'm a sinner. But I have no qualification of my own. However, he's addressing Govardhan. Your beloved Shachinandan Mahaprabhu, he has given me to you. So you cannot deny me. You must accept me. And then Nija Nikata Nivasam Devi Govardhana Tam. This is the refrain of every verse. Govardhana Vas Partana Dashakam. Nija Nikata Nivasam Devi Govardhana Tam. He's praying for, please, give me some residence close to you. Give me some shelter close to you. And it is Raghunath Das Goswami who made that very bold prayer to Srimati Radharani. Ashabhadaya mita sindhu mayai katanchit kalo mayati namitaki dasamkatam tvam chedvipam mayi vidasya sinayakime praner rajena cha Ragarupa Karanapi, where he's saying that, you know, Srila Sridhar describes it as a direct prayer to Radharani. And I've been waiting for so long, you know, I'm here at the end of my life, been waiting so long for your mercy. And I've been maintaining my life on the hope of getting your grace. You know? And he describes this hope, this aspiration, as an ocean of nectar, Amrita Sindhu. That aspiration, Ashavadar, Amrita Sindhu. Just that aspiration that I will receive your divine service. You know, this is like an ocean of nectar. I'm sustaining my life. You know, what is Krishna consciousness? Just the hope of getting it is so great that you can live on that. Just the aspiration that you may get it. So what is Krishna consciousness? You know, how great, how high is this? But just the hope that I can get your divine mercy, I can get your service connection. I'm living on that. And for so many years I've been living on that. And then he says, but I don't know how much longer I can go on. And if I don't get your mercy, then of what use is anything to me? My own life will not be meaningful to me. Vrindavan will not be meaningful to me. Even Krishna will not be meaningful to me without your connection. You are everything. So this verse is like, in a very clear way, identifying, you know, where this line is taking us, you know, where, you know, what is the aspiration of our gurus, Radha-dasya. You know, this has been given by Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. You know, he lived a life of extreme abnegation. Drinking buttermilk. Very, very, you know, extreme. But his heart absorbed in these highest things. Like this is the extreme example of simple living and high thinking, you know. You know, this is like a cute little catchphrase. Like this is what it means, you know. Like in the highest sense, in its highest expression, the furthest end of the spectrum. You know, like taking nothing from living under trees. You know, there's one story. You know, even the other Goswamis would worry about Raghunath because he was like, it was a new level. You know, and there's that story how he was at the banks of the Jamuna, and he was on maybe writing something or in some meditation on the banks of the Jamuna. And there's a tiger that comes and drinks from the Jamuna. And it peacefully comes and drinks and then goes away. This big tiger. And Raghunath is not disturbed, not noticing. And Sanatana Goswami observes that. And he's worried. You know, like Raghunath, like, you should have like some sense of, you know, like practical reality here. And so I think Sanatana made some arrangement for him, like some shelter or something. But like to that degree, you know, he was detached, you know, from the world happenings. And that current, you know, Arup and Raghunath, you know, that it come to our gurus. And Srila Saraswati Thakur would speak like that, like we must spread the teachings of Rupa and Raghunath. Well, this is our mission. In a general sense, we're followers of Mahaprabhu. But in a more specific sense, it is that line that has come down through the hearts of Srila Rupa Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, you know, to the present day. How they knew Mahaprabhu and appreciated Mahaprabhu. You know. our whole understanding, practice is percolated with that. So I think I'll stop there. There's so much that can be said about Bhakti Vasanta. I think these are like the essential.
Maybe more tonight? Maybe?
Yeah, we could do. Let's see. Could do. It's also nice to, like you have this box of treasures and just like, for a few moments, well, this is so good because it's so precious that we can put away. Or you have like a box of very expensive candies, and take out one or two once a year. But yeah, we could say more tonight. I'll see. I also feel, like very unqualified to discuss such, high personalities. But we'll see. If I feel like they're backing me, they want me to say something more. But those are the essential points about So pray for His grace, for the grace of all these divine persons, this very sacred.